like growing up in Mint County back then?
Well, it was hard times during the Depression, but it was great. We didn't know it was bad times. We had plenty to eat and a good place to live. And my mother and my two brothers, my sister, we all grew up together and got along good. And we farmed and had cattle and hogs and goats and what have you. And really had no problems growing up during the Depression.
Your dad was a farmer?
Yeah, he worked for the railroad company until 1925, and he had, they called it rheumatism back then. His knees got swelled so big he couldn't walk, and he had to quit. And we come back from New Orleans to Mint County, and a place he already owned, and we lived there until he died. Well, he died in '42, and then my mother moved to town, and I own the old place now.
What's town? Where?
Liberty's the nearest town. There was a little town, I called it Peoria, but that was just when the train, it used to be a train running from here to Liberty, and that was on it.
When did you meet Betty?
Must have been 40, probably in the late part of 1940.
Did y'all meet before the war?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Where did you meet her? How'd you meet?
Through some off cousins of mine. I went to their house, and she was in school with them, and that's how we met.
Did you know right off the bat that was her?
No, he was just off and on for quite a while, and we decided we liked one another well enough to sort of hang together. And then I went in the Army, and I come back on furlough, and we got married.
Tell me about what you did right before the war. What was going on and what you did for a living?
I went to work at a machine shop in Macomb. My dad had a blacksmith shop when I was a kid. I grew up in it. And I went to work in a machine shop. Well, there's a parts place, and I grew with it. We built battery boxes, and I patented the first creeper to lay down under the car to work on, and used to manufacture them. And then I built some equipment and built parts bins, and we made them by the hundreds and shipped them to Napa stores all over the country for years.
Really?
And then as machine equipment got better, I bought better equipment, and I run that machine shop to 1985.
What was the name of the shop?
Parker Auto Parts, and I run the machine shop for them. Mm-hmm. I run it on commission. After the war, I come back and I got paid every 3 months. I strictly worked for commission. I drew no salary.
Wow.
And she got used to not charging stuff. We never had charge accounts. And I got 4 paychecks a year.
That's amazing, because we complain if we get 1 paycheck a month.
She got used to it and didn't know any different.
Wow. Tell me, where were you when you heard about Pearl Harbor being attacked?
I was at her daddy's house. That's when I heard about it. And I waited for the draft. I didn't volunteer.
Did somebody come by and tell y'all about it?
No, it was on come in on the radio they had.
You were listening on the radio?
Mm-hmm.
What did you think at that time?
Well, I knew we was in trouble. We had trusted the Japs, and they stabbed us in the back. Mm-hmm. And I knew in reason that we'd get into World War II on account of the French and the British had got stomped all over the country over there.
So when did you join up?
October 8, 1942.
Okay, tell me again, when did you join up?
October the 8th, 1942.
But you volunteered?
No, I was drafted.
You were drafted. What branch of the service did you go into?
I went in Hattiesburg on October the 8th, and on the 4th, I left on the train, went to 40th and Island, Vermont, to an ordnance outfit, the 84th Ordnance Company. And we was attached when they activated First Army. We was attached to them until the war was over. We didn't have a definite job. If they needed somebody for a special job, they called us. I was in 13 different camps the first 12 months I was in the Army. But we was always doing something for the Army.
What kind of things did you do?
Well, I helped work on the first bazooka at the Aberdeen Proving Ground. And after it was perfected, they was doing a rocket to fire from an airplane. They called it a Bud rocket, and had a proximity fuse. And that meant that if it had a light on it, and any dark object passed it, it would blow up. And we tested it there on Chesapeake Bay. And I was lucky enough to get to ride in the plane when we tested the first ones. And then I worked on the first positive rear end, where neither wheel couldn't spin. One started spinning, it automatically locked, and both of them pulled. I had to work on it at the Proving Ground.
Cool. You were in Canada for a little bit.
Yeah, and we left there and we went to Canada and spent the winter at Camp Shiloh. And we tested equipment for all types of cold climates. And that was cold up there too. And we tested big guns from 240 howitzers on down to rifles, tanks, trucks, and the tires we carried up there. On a cold morning, you could hit them with a hammer and they'd knock a round hole in them. We had to use kerosene for oil in the differentials on the trucks. The grease you put in them is so cold that you couldn't move one in the morning. But we survived.
It was during your time at Canada that you soon came back to Mississippi and got married?
No, just before we went. No, after we come back. That's right. After we come back from Canada, yeah. It was not too long before we went overseas.
Well, tell me how that came about.
Well,
When you married.
Well, we just decided we wanted to, and I come home on furlough, and we got married.
Did they get married in church or?
Yeah, Episcopal Church here in Macomb. I didn't have it for 5 days. And I had to go back to 40th and Island, Vermont. That's a long train ride.
Betty was working at that time, wasn't she?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Where was she working?
Consolidated Aircraft in New Orleans.
And how'd you feel about that, her working?
It was fine with me. I didn't mind her working. She had worked before. She went to Texas and went to Army school. Found out she didn't want to work on trucks right quick.
When did you go overseas? Shortly after you got married?
We went in, October. We went in right a day or two after Thanksgiving. We boarded ship. And we went over on the Aquitania. There's 13,000 of us on it. We went through the North Sea. And it's so cold. We'd get up in the morning, we was on the top deck, and the water would freeze during the night, and we'd take picks, and they'd go with big old hammers and bust it, and we'd pick it and throw it overboard to lighten the load on top of the boat. But you talking about some horrible food. You eat some limey food for 13 days. They'd bring eggs out, boiled eggs in a tub, and they'd been boiled so long they'd be green. But they didn't make us sick.
So it took y'all 13 days to get to where?
Fiji for Fifth, I believe is the way they pronounce it over there, in England, a little port. on the English coast. We was reported sunk 2 or 3 times. The Germans knew we was out there. We was by ourselves. We wasn't escorted because that ship was so fast. It could outrun most, anything that the Germans had if they had any idea where it was.
So you got to England. Tell me about your tour of duty. Take me through it.
We went in south of Bristol, between Bristol and Oxford. The British government had put up Nissen huts, just in round top 10 buildings, and we moved in there with all of our equipment. Our equipment followed us over there on a freighter, and we got it all in. And I was a vehicle inspector, and me and a second lieutenant, we started at Dover and we went all the way up through Scotland, checking the other outfits, see if they was maintaining their equipment right. And if we found something wrong, well, we saw that it was maintained and compound over there. And we waterproofed vehicles where we could drive them underwater. We went up to Birmingham, England, and we worked on that about 6 to 8 weeks. And you could take one of those big trucks and drive it right off in the English Channel, and as long as the water didn't come up over the top of the steering wheel, you could drive it right on up on the bank. The Jeeps and that kind of stuff. And when we hit the beach, we drove our vehicle right off the boat into the English Channel and drove them up on the beach. But most of my job when I was in England was vehicle inspector with a Lieutenant Gant. I'd be detached from my outfit. And there were some other people that did the same thing.
Tell me about your experience at D-Day.
Well, we sat on the boat out there in the channel and hoped one of them shells wouldn't hit us or something, or they would strafe us. They strafed us one time just before we got off the boat, but everybody bailed down inside of it, away from it.
What kind of boat was it?
It was an old English boat that they had done some work on, where you could load trucks and everything else on it. It was just a big old wreck.
So y'all were sitting out there while the actual invasion, as the infantry hit the beach, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, we went in behind the infantry, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what was that like? Were you sitting there watching that?
We could see part of it, yeah. There's so much smoke, you couldn't see much of it. Those big old German guns, once in a while you'd see one of them stick out the side of that cliff and fire. But we was out at an angle away from that. But
you couldn't see actually what was happening though, I guess, huh?
no, we couldn't actually see what was happening. Like I say, there was so much smoke and stuff there. Every once in a while you'd see a bunch of bodies float by after the second day. But you got to the point after a day or two that you just took that as part of it. And we drove in, they just float away from the vehicles and you go on in. And they wasn't nothing good to look at, but we knew we had a job to do and we had to do it.
So, I mean, you all came in the third day afterwards?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, can you describe the scene to us? What was it really like?
Well, it was actually, by that third day, it was sort of quiet up on the beach, but as soon as you got up there, that was fighting everywhere you looked. That was machine guns and what have you, and we went into a little apple orchard and we dug foxholes and got in them. And the infantry and the Air Force was putting down such a barrage, and the Navy from out in the channel was just continually dropping shells 200 or 300 yards ahead of us. And that was just part of it. And those old hedgerows, and our outfit built the first hedgerow cutter. We took an old tank and cut railroad track and welded it on the front. and you could run into those hedgerows, and it was at an angle down, and it would tear into the roots of them, and that would kick that hedgerow out of the ground. The tank couldn't go through one of those hedgerows to start with. And you could hear the Germans talking on the other side of the hedgerows in places. It was that close. But main thing you did was try to keep your hides clean, where you wouldn't somebody shoot you. You'd hide every time you got a chance. But
did you actually have to do any fighting?
2 or 3 times we approached some pillboxes, and you couldn't get by them, where they had those slits on them, and they'd be shooting at you, and somebody would get some grenades, and you turn a machine gun on that slit, and they'd just crawl up there, and when the machine gun at a signal would quit firing, they'd just throw them over in there and duck. And of course, we lost quite a few men in different times.
Did you actually have to do any fighting? I mean,
Well, no more than anybody, You'd be shooting, you didn't know what you were shooting at, that kind of stuff. Now, I made a trip back to Paris one time on an assignment when the French were stealing our equipment. They were stealing us blind. A train would be parked in the yard, and a moving train would come in loaded with American equipment. That's after we went through Paris. And they'd stop it, and they'd throw stuff from one train to the other. And they sent a lieutenant and myself on detached service down there for 10 days. And we slept in the yard at night with black clothes on and climbed up on top of that sitting train that was sidetracked. And when they started throwing stuff from one train to the other, we had machine guns, and we just take it and turn wide open and just run them back and forth between the trains. And we don't know how many we killed, don't have the slightest idea in either one of us. But I know some of them got full of them 45 caliber bullets. And we left there and went back to Lyon and did the same thing, and didn't have any more trouble with the French stealing equipment.
why were they stealing equipment?
They sell and use. They were stealing antifreeze and tires and that kind of stuff, which was scarce in France.
Yeah, but they were supposed to be allies, yes?
Yeah, but you got thugs everywhere.
You got thugs everywhere. You got bad apples everywhere. Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me, so after you did that, what next?
Well, I really got ahead of things.
Okay.
After we hit the beach, we went in through France, went through the Falaise Gap, and on into Paris. And after we left Paris, of course, went to Belgium. And
What was it like going into Paris?
well, there was very little fighting going on. The Arc de Triomphe had some snipers in it when we went in, but there was an infantry outfit that was going in with us, and they cleaned that out pretty quick. And we spent one night at Versailles before we went into Paris. And then when we got left there, we went to just north of Paris. Let's see, or maybe northeast. And we stayed at the Baron Rothschild estate. He was a big wine baron in France for years. And it was something to see what he had out there, and the way they lived compared to the other people in France.
Well, so what was it like? What was Paris like at that time?
Paris was great to us. The Firestone people had a plant there in Paris, and we run up on the manager of it. He took our whole outfit and fed us one day for dinner. And I don't know what it cost him, but still, they was nice to us. And I was back in Paris 5 or 6 times after that, doing different things. And then, of course, we went right on through Belgium, and we spent the winter in the little town of Spa, Belgium. It's on the west side of the mountain before you go into Liège. And that's where the Germans run us out during the Battle of the Bulge. We went up from there, we carried stuff up to Bastogne, and we got out of there just ahead of the Germans. But we never did go back into Belgium any distance. During the Bulge, it was pretty cleared out pretty quick.
Were you actually involved in the Battle of the Bulge, or you were ahead of all that, or what?
No, we was in it.
You were in it.
I got injured in the Battle of the Bulge. Nothing but bad. Just got some shrapnel wounds.
Well, tell me what that was like. You tell me what it was like.
Well, I thought I'd hurt bad. There was 2 of us that was working on some vehicles. When the Germans got so close they had to leave, they left us there. And the American planes come in and bombed us. They thought the Germans was trying to take that equipment. And after it's over, he could walk and I couldn't. I made him leave. And 2 or 3 hours after he left, I began to feel my legs were warm, what have you, and a big chunk of dirt had hit me in the back. And somewhat reason it had partially paralyzed my legs. And when dark come, the Germans were walking the road, and I got in a ditch, and they'd pass, and I'd crawl down that ditch. And the next morning, I was back with my outfit. I walked 12 miles that night, and got away from there. I didn't want to eat supper with them crowds.
Were you terrified, or were you just trying to survive?
No,
or?
That shrapnel doesn't hurt. It's traveling so fast, and it's so hot. There's a piece hit there. There's a horseshoe up there, and I didn't know it till the next day. I didn't know mirror or nothing. And there's a piece now sticking through my jawbone this way, still in my mouth. And I had a piece in my back. When I had back surgery 6, 7 years ago, Dr. Barrett took it out. But it doesn't bother you. It never didn't bother me in any way.
When you were hiding from the Germans, what was that like?
Well, there was snow like that, but the ditches didn't have snow in them. They were thawed out. And I don't know why, but the mountains there, the soil was warm enough or something. Those ditches didn't freeze over bad. And I'd lay in that ditch, and it took a time when the guards would pass. And as soon as I found out how long you'd be gone, I'd take off crawling. And then I'd stop. And I knew there's 2 of them would cross one another. And when they crossed and got a little ways back, I'd go again. And when I quit seeing them, I got them started down the road. But that's all there was to it.
That's just mind-blowing. Well, tell me about some of your other combat experiences. You were involved with St. Lo? No?
In St. Lo.
I thought you were telling me about St. Lo in there, I thought. No?
We went through there.
Okay.
But we wouldn't mixed up in it. There wasn't actually no battle much at St. Lo.
I think you just got bombed a lot, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, tell me about some of your other combat experiences.
And then we went into where's that big cathedral in Germany? The one that had 15 minutes to get out of. It's on the Rhine River.
Yeah, I should know. But
But anyway, we was there up on the hill, and watched them when they was bumming around and around it and shooting artillery, and then they made the Germans get out of there. And we left there and went down to Koblenz, and that's where we crossed the Rhine. We helped the engineers put a pontoon bridge across the river, the Rhine River, and we crossed there at Koblenz. And the town was all destroyed except one apartment house, but everything under it was honeycomb with wine cellars. And we drove 2 trucks in there and filled them up with wine. Had a good time. And when we left there, it was just, well, the Germans was on the run. Actually, the war was over by the time we got across the river any distance. There were so many prisoners, we just tell them to get out of the way and go on. We didn't even start picking them up. And we went into Frankfurt, and we was there about 6 weeks, and then that's when we went up to Weimar, and that was where they made automobiles. And we was there until the war was over. And things got so quiet, we got loose one evening, and some Corps of Engineers people, we went up to the Elbe River and put some Bailey Bridge on one end of it, and we went into Berlin, waiting for the Russians to get there. They wouldn't let us stay in there. And we went in and out of Berlin for 2 weeks before the Russians ever got there. They wanted them to have and be the big shots that captured Berlin.
What was Berlin like during that time while y'all waiting for the Russians to get there? I mean, it was in bad shape, wasn't it?
It was, you couldn't recognize it hardly. There was so much stuff torn up in it. It was bombed from one end to the other. The people was hungry. They didn't have enough to eat. And it was an horrible state when we went into Berlin. And of course, the German population wasn't too bad. You know, they treated us fairly good. When we was in Weimar, we would go to Bad Neuheim, they called it. It was hot springs, and we confiscated a German bus, and we'd go there on the weekend and get in those big old tubs of that hot water, and have a good time out there.
Did you ever come across or hear about like the death camps, the concentration camps while you were in Berlin?
Yeah, we went into Buchenwald.
Did you?
Mm-hmm. I had pictures. They took every picture that even looked anything resembled it. The Army did away from us. There was 4 or 5 of us that went there, and we went to pick up a tank that was disabled pretty close, and went there. And you just can't believe what went on. In the corner of the yard, they had human livers hanging up that they would eat. Of course, you eat them out of it, it'd kill you.
If you did what now, they would kill you?
Eat that liver, any amount of that liver, that dried liver. When your body was emancipated so bad and you couldn't digest it, there's so much iron in it. And there's another place, Nordhausen. They had all these German women, and they did experimental medicine on them. They'd cut slits in their legs and put glass in it and all kinds of stuff to see it. And originally, it was used for a recreation center for the big German officers and the soldiers and stuff. And they had all these, another one place pretty close to it that had nothing but blonde German women. And they was raising kids just like you raise cattle. They called it a non-Aryan. That was some of Hitler's raising of a super race. And we come through that just for, we was in there one day.
Hold it for a second.
That's okay. Keep going.
But they'd do anything. Those German soldiers would do anything. We left some wounded soldiers in a smokehouse one day, beside the road. We put them in there out of the weather, and it was raining. We went to get a truck to move them. We come back, German soldiers had found them, and they'd stuck a bayonet through every one of them, killed. But the general population, was pretty nice to us.
When you came to the concentration camps, the death camps, were they already cleared out at that time?
No, they was clearing them out.
They still had people there.
Yeah. That was people that was, that was still living that was in there. They had those things where they burned them, and the bodies wasn't much left of them anyway. It didn't take but about 3 or 4 minutes to consume a human body in there. There was a pile of ashes that was 10 feet high and almost that wide across. It wasn't nothing but human ashes out there. But he'd give you nightmares for a while. But the general public knew about all that. But we've stayed in a boarding house between Frankfurt and Weimar for a while, and this old lady owned it, and it had been bombing, and the light wires was all down, and she had no electricity. Of course, we didn't have any either, so several of us got out there, and we hooked the wires all back up and got electricity and all, and we got ready to leave. She gave me a little box, about yay big square. And I threw it in the duffel bag, and later on I opened it, and it was a fob watch and 7 silver spoons. It was dated 1708. And there was a little locket with a chain on it with a ruby in it. And she had just said thanks in the bottom, which, you don't know about people. But she appreciated it, I suppose.
What happened to those spoons and that?
Betty's got them. Betty's got them.
Betty's got them, okay.
Mm-hmm. The little watch, it's a fob watch, and it has a cylinder movement. It's not made like the watches we have now. And the case is all gold. You can take your fingernail and bend the case. It's so soft.
Tell me about where you found the German flag and the sword and the gun.
That was in St. Lo.
Mm-hmm.
And we got into town after they quit bombing, and the amateur went ahead of us. We got stopped right in town. We had some dozers, and we was cleaning the road, and I asked the guy something about what that building was there. And this Frenchman said, that's where the tank commander lived. And 2 of us went in there. And he had run out and left everything he owned in there. It was clothes and everything. That's where those metal things that I had come from, most of them. And there was his pistol and his sword and flag, and there was a saddle, and he had silk comforters on his bed with down in them. And we confiscated that stuff. I gave my son the pistol when he graduated from college. And I gave one of the big colonels in the First Army those comforters. And when I got ready to send that pistol home, the Army tried to take it away from me and never could find it. He signed for it where I could send it home. And it was one of a kind. Very few of them was ever made. But I don't know what his name was. And there's a K on each side of the butt of that pistol. And one of the Frenchmen said his name was Kessring. One of them said it was Kaiser. So, but I never did know exactly who he was.
What about the Navigator watch? Tell me about that.
Oh, that was when they bombed St. Lo. One of the bombers crashed not far from us. And we went down there. The fire was burning everywhere around it. and was standing there watching it. And I happened to look and I saw that something shining and picked it up. It was a pocket watch. It's a master navigator's watch. It's a navigator. Everybody's watch has got to be set by that particular watch. And it's one of the most expensive watches that they made back in that time. And I gave it to the Army Museum in Hattiesburg, and they had never seen one. And I had an officer's Army issue wristwatch. I gave it to them. They had no watches over there from World War II in the museum. And that was his dress. I brought his dress, got his dress sword, and I mailed it all home.
You mailed the saddle home too, didn't you?
Yeah, it's hanging up out here with that little brick house.
Let's back up a little bit. The photos of the death camp, you said they took them away from you?
Oh yeah, the Army did.
Why did they take them away, do you know?
I don't know, but they wouldn't let nobody have any of them except the Army.
Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit more about your combat experiences. Anything else?
Well,
What was some of the more interesting jobs that you had?
well, we carried some ammunition up to Bastogne just before it was closed off, and it probably helped keep them running out before the Germans, would have probably got in there if they hadn't had that ammunition. Our cooks was even driving trucks hauling ammunition, and in that way, they had plenty to fight with up there.
So you pretty much saw all the big stuff, didn't you? All the big battles.
Yeah, we was in the main part of the war.
Mm-hmm.
And so we didn't lose but very few people. But we was not in actual combat. We was right behind the infantry. If a tank broke down between the American troops and the Germans, if they could keep some gunfire over there, we'd try to go in there and get it, and bring it back and fix it. But that was that was the extent of our actual combat.
You were in Berlin and for 2 weeks before the Russians came?
Mm-hmm. We'd go in there and spend the day and then come back to our outfit at Weimar. We didn't spend the night there.
Okay. Tell me about winding up the end of the war.
Well, it was exciting. The Russians had never had any money, and they paid them. They would buy anything that was American. If a watch, whether it run or not, if it had a luminous dial, you could get $30, $40 for it. I've been in several times, nothing on my shorts. I'd even sold my socks. I went in with a full colonel to the gate, and he had his hat on and his shorts. And I didn't even have a hat on. I even sold my hat. And we had a lot of fun doing that. And the Russians finally got to where they decided what money was what. But they'd have a handful of money, and you just take part of it and trade with them. And I sent home about 3 times as much money as I was making.
How did you communicate with Betty during your time during the war?
Well, you write letters, but the company commander looked at every one of them, and he scratched out what he didn't want you to write. And it'd usually take 3 weeks, for letters, until he got the V-mail or the email, and then it was pretty fast.
How often did you receive a letter from Betty?
I'd usually get one nearly every day, sometimes 4 or 5 at a time. We'd write one another nearly every day, some way. Sometimes I'd mail 4 or 5 at a time, because it'd be a place, there wasn't no place to mail it.
What was that like for you getting letters from her during that time?
Oh, they really helped you. They picked you up. And every once in a while you'd get some cookies or something, you know, from the States. And it really give you a boost.
She said y'all burned all of those letters after the war?
Yes, about 6, 7 years ago she decided let's burn them. So she gathered them all up and burned them.
Why'd she burn them?
I don't know, just got tired. Didn't think much of them. The kids didn't seem to care nothing about them. And well, what do you think? It's all right with me. It's all right with you.
So did y'all have a little ceremony and burn them, or y'all just?
No, we just put them in the trash pile and burned them.
Okay. What was the worst day of the war for you?
It was about 2 weeks after we hit the beach. We was bivouacked in just a small apple orchard, and it was shells going over the top, shells coming back over, and the Germans flew over and they jumped mortar shells out of the door of the plane, and just indiscriminately dropping them. And when you'd be in a foxhole and one of them would fall and you'd have to dig your way out, you didn't know where the next was going to be moved over a few feet. And you just had to grit your teeth and try to get that hole a little deeper or something. And we had several people killed at that time. And there's always something funny about it that'll happen. I was on guard one night, and I thought somebody was crawling through a hedgerow. And we had a multiple 50 caliber gun on the back of the truck. And I just ate that hedgerow up. The next morning, we had a big dead horse over there. He was grazing on the limbs. And I got called a horse at A for a long time after that. But that, you know, that happened. And it was just something, you know, that went on. And we had been eating K rations for 3 weeks. I mean, we didn't eat that stuff. We was sick of it. And they moved us up probably a quarter of a mile. And this Frenchman had a great big fat heifer in a little old pasture there one night. And we had our own cooks. And we was talking. And one of the cooks said, "Man, wouldn't that meat taste good?" I said, "If y'all will help me cut it up, I'd kill that heifer and skin her, and we'll eat her." And they helped me hem her up, and I cut her throat and skin her. And we quartered it up and carried it back to the outfit. Man, we had a good time there for a few days. We had fresh beef and really enjoyed it. That Frenchman, he had to do without one of them cows of his. But nobody didn't say nothing about it. Our officer was just as hungry as something as we was.
Did y'all have enough to eat, or y'all just couldn't?
We had enough, but it wasn't nothing but K rations. And all them little old cans had cheese in it. And it smelled pretty good, but you get it in your mouth, you just about had to dig it off your teeth with a knife. It would stick so bad. Scrambled eggs, some of them is 3 years old. And to look at the dates on them made you not want to eat it too well. But we had plenty of it.
Do you ever think, was there a time you ever thought, when is this ever going to end?
Yeah, that's the one thing you wonder about. And one of the biggest mistakes was made over there was by old General Patton in the 3rd Army. They run off up there in that Falaise area, give out gas, give out ammunition. They had a whole German army almost completely surrounded, and they couldn't move. We had to haul gasoline and stuff to them. And while that was happening, that German army got out. They always publicized them out to anything. But that Falaise Gap was one of the biggest boondoggles in the whole campaign in Europe. Because General Bradley we'd see him pretty regularly in our outfit. And he was the brains of that campaign over there. And he would talk about it. How horrible it was that Patton didn't wait till he had enough supplies and let all those German soldiers get out and the German equipment. And that was just one of the few mistakes over there. But the American Army didn't make a lot of mistakes.
Did you ever actually meet one of the German soldiers?
Oh yeah, we was connected, and you see lots of them, prisoners. We'd pick them up. Yeah, we come back from come back to Camp Kilman, New Jersey, got off the boat. We supposed to have steak for supper. And we got in there. They had big old codfish baked, and Germans working in the kitchen. And they refused to cook us steaks. It was 11 o'clock at night. And we used those hot fish for hand grenades. And we cleaned them Germans out of there pretty quick. And when the commander of the Camp Kilman got there, he started raising a lot of sand. And we still wasn't in no good humor. And we told him what to do if we didn't have steaks. So they gathered up cooks, and they come back there and they cooked us steaks. 208 of them.
This was after y'all got back from overseas?
Yeah. Gonna give us cold fish for supper. We'd been on that boat for 11 days, and we had to sleep in shifts. There's so many of it, you had a bed for 8 hours, and the next man kicked you out, and he had 8 hours. That went over 24 hours a day till we got home. And then we was gonna eat cold fish. And them German soldiers, well, they lipped off at us because we made fun of them fish. We wasn't gonna eat them. But we cleaned them out pretty quick.
What do you mean you cleaned them out?
Run around that kitchen. We took them hot fish and throwed at them. That they had cooked for hours. But they had it made. They didn't treat our soldiers like that. But that was just, I think you could just call that war.
Tell me about the day you actually came home and to Betty. What was that like?
Well, I left Camp Shelby October 8, 1942. October 8, 1945, I got back. I come out the same gate I went in about the same time of the day. And she was there, and an uncle of mine lived in Hattiesburg. He brought her out there. And it was a great day. I had brought 8 officers from Camp Kilman to Hattiesburg. I was a technician, 3rd grade, and I had a bunch of officers. I'd boss it. That was a lot of fun. I'd tell them what to do. I enjoyed that. They'd been telling me so long. But when I got off the boat, I was assigned duty to this group that was coming to Hattiesburg, and I didn't know who I had until I got to the railroad station. I mean, calling names off. Captain this and captain that, major this, lieutenant this. And I looked around, there wasn't no enlisted men, period, but me. But I got them at Camp Shelby. And we all got discharged.
So what was life like trying to get back into a regular way of living?
Well, I had left the shop, and the people had to give you the same job back when the Army was over. And I wasn't back but a week. The man had been running it while I was gone. He walked off, and I had to go to work a week after I got back. And I just filled in right where I had left off, 1942.
Did you have problems fitting back in?
No, because I had been doing a lot of the same work in the Army that I come back and started doing.
But certainly after 3 years of all that, I hate to use the word excitement and adventure. I mean, was it hard coming back to life a little quieter?
No, it really didn't bother me. I was glad to get back, but I just dropped back in the routine like I'd done before. And there was one thing, I took the shop on a commission basis. I was my own boss. I hired my own help. And as long as I made the company money, they had no control over it. And that I didn't draw, but most I ever drawed a month was $13 while in the 3 years I was in the Army. Because I sent my mother that money. My daddy wasn't able to work. She didn't have no income. And I sent them, in the first 2 months I drawed $21, and then it went up to $50. And I sent them $32 a month. And then I had $7 for my insurance. And I didn't have 11 left, even when I was getting $50 a month. And then I got married, and that took $6 more out of it. So there wasn't much money left.
Do you ever talk about your experiences in the war to your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren?
If they ask a question.
Is there anything that you wouldn't tell them?
Well, there's some things that you see that you just wouldn't want to tell them.
Why wouldn't you want to tell them?
Well, you can see what the Germans did to civilians and what they did to our soldiers up at Malmedy and that kind of stuff. I told them they killed them. I didn't tell them how and what they did to them. And they'd catch somebody, a civilian in France that they thought wasn't doing right, and they'd mutilate them and lay them out in the street and all that stuff, or get them out there before the public and beat them to pieces with clubs or stomp them to death and that kind of stuff. And unless they try to pin you down, you just let that go on by.
What you said, what they tried to pin you down, you talking about, who are you talking about?
The kids, the grandkids.
You don't think that's important for them to know?
Not really.
You don't think it's important for them to understand what you experienced and your generation experienced?
Oh yeah, well that part of it, yeah, I think that they ought to know about it. And they ask questions, and they've been through pictures, and they said, what's this, and this, and all that. And but some of the things that went on, as horrible as it was, I didn't see no reason to burden them with it.
You want to burden me with it?
No.
How did you deal with it?
Huh?
And you can tell Katie, how did you deal with those things? You experienced those things. How did you deal
Well, you get so mad, at times you think, well, you kill anything that's a German. And then you had to back up and swallow it. And at times, when you see some stuff with little kids that would be horribly treated, that you saw a German out there and you had a gun, you'd kill him. And we had people that did it. Not just once, but dozens of times. And we had one fella that went into some kind of an outbuilding where there was a French woman and 2 kids. And they had gone in there and killed those kids. And they'd beat her down and they thought she was dead and left her. Just back for no reason. These SS troops are just about like the Japs was down in the islands. They were just that brutal. And I never did see whether that would help anybody to see that picture. And that, be involved with it. And it's just like seeing dead soldiers. You got to the point where you just had to say, well, he was unlucky. If you worried about it, you'd go crazy as a nut. And if one of your buddies got killed, Yeah, that was tough luck. You so far you better off than he is. You might be the next one. You felt bad for a while, but you had to keep going. You had a job to do.
What is the one thing that you'd want maybe your great grandchildren and future generations to know about that time?
Well, that we went that a winter war. We won it. We did whatever it took, no matter how hard it was. Lots of times we'd go 3 days and never have a wink of sleep. We didn't have R&R like they had in Vietnam. Every few weeks you could go to Japan and get drunk and have a big time. It was an everyday affair with us from the time actually we got to England. If they wasn't bumming you on at night, you was working night and day. So we'd work till 11 o'clock, because at night over in the summertime, it doesn't get dark until 10:30, 11 o'clock. And we'd get up daylight, and we'd work. We'd get about 4 or 5 hours of sleep. We was doing good. But that's the last war. We won. Korea we didn't. Vietnam we didn't. And but we went there to win it and get out of there and leave. And when I got out of the Army, I didn't want nothing out of the Army. They offered me $13.60 pension. If I ever need any help in the Army, I'll ask you. And of course, Mr. Clinton took care of that. Now, if you've got as much as $30,000 in cash, you can't get one dime of help from the Veterans Administration. You can't even go into the hospital unless it's an emergency and you've got your discharge certified copy with you. If you've got that much money, assets. That law went into effect around 2004. And if you hadn't already signed up, you can forget about getting anything if you're a World War II veteran. But that's just part of living. You live without it.
Say something, son?
Well, I mean, it's a question of pride from that era of time. You had pride in yourself and all that, and that's why you didn't take that money. How do you see that contradicting to today? And do you think that that's something that is something that should be addressed in America?
Yeah.
I mean, right now I'm thinking if you could say to the new president right now how he should fix this, why he should fix this.
Cut out all this free stuff and let people go to work. People now, I work on people's boat motors here at the house. Because there's nobody to work on them between Jackson and Hammond, what I'd work on. And every time I look up, here comes some big, healthy fella, on SSI. But he can sit in the boat and fish every day, all 7, 8 hours, and got back trouble. He can pick up a 150-pound outboard and throw it on the back of that boat or in that truck. But he's down in the back and on SSI. And so many people, I've got a nephew in World War II. He was in the Army 3 months and 5 days and claimed he had back trouble. Got out, he kept going to Jackson and finally got a full pension. But he had cattle and tractors. He could ride a tractor all day long and work. And but yet he was supposed to be disabled. Now he's 90 years old and still can get along good and still drawing a pension. All this free stuff, people should have to work for it to get. If somebody's physically in bad shape, I don't mind helping them. But when they're in good shape and then sucking on the taxpayers, I think that they need to stop it. There's too much giveaway for the amount of work people are doing. You can't hire none of these young people to work anymore. They can stay at home and draw unemployment or welfare or what have you. And that's what's bankrupt in our country.
I'm sorry, he may not have answered your question.
No,
I
that's
got
okay.
him off in another
That's
direction.
okay.
Is there anything else you want to tell us about that time? Any other stories about that time?
I mean, that's, that pretty well covers what's been going on through the years. I started plowing a mule when I was 7 years old. And it didn't hurt me a bit. I'm 89, I work every day yet. I set out to over 300 oak trees this year, 200 pine trees I set out myself. And over a period of 20 years, I set out over 2 million pine seedlings. And we just cut them this past year, 300 acres I set out myself. And it never has hurt me to work. The first piece of property I bought was 1939. I was making $7 a week, working 6.5 days. And it joined my daddy's place, and I wanted it. And the bank wanted $150 down payment. And I had $50. Nobody would lend me $100. And at that time, they used to ice refrigerator cars in Macomb. A fellow Kramer had an ice house. And I got a job at night. After I got off from my regular job at 6 o'clock, at 6:30, I was icing refrigerator cars to 1 o'clock the next morning. I worked 3 months, from 7 in the morning to 1 the next morning, 7 days a week, and made $154. And I bought that 247 acres of land, paid $800 for it.
Good Lord.
And I still got it. And then my mother died. I bought my brother's part of the old home place, and we've got right at 400 acres. And, but I put it all in timber, and we cut it last year, clear cut it the first time.
How do you think, or it did, your war experience change you?
Well, it makes you appreciate life, and it makes you appreciate what you got. And if you want something, work for it. Don't hold your hand out and expect somebody to hand it to you. And my kids, every one of them, when they was coming up, they had to work. My son had helped me build a fence when he was 5 years old. He'd carry that little bucket of staples. When he got a little big, he could dig post holes. And the kids helped Betty here in the house, in the garden, what have you. And they've all turned out good. I sent them all to college. When they got out, they didn't owe a dime. And they've all got good jobs, and they're proud of what they've done, and we're proud of them.
Got anything else you'd like to add to all of this?
Nothing I don't know of.
Okay.